gentlemen, gather around for a unique look into the world of custom motorcycling. We've gathered some of the industry's top builders and fabricators on this stage to show you their skills live and in person. Watch as they chop, grind, and weld their creations into existence right before your very eyes. Feel free to ask questions at any time directly to your host, Pat Jansen. The doors to the shop are open, so pull up a stool, kick back, and welcome to the Grease and Gears Garage.
What's up, Dallas? Monster Truck Jam, Pat Jansen in the house. Hey, we're Grease and Gears Garage. We're a bunch of really kind of greasy mechanics from around the country. We build custom motorcycles, but we have designed this opportunity to invite people into what it feels like to be in a garage environment, to demystify some of the tools and some of the activities that go on, to share stories. We're not professional mouth talkers. We just want to help you guys see what it's like to work on motorcycles, hopefully inspire you and give you a little education about how you can customize your motorcycle as well. We're Facebook Live in this. So anything we do at any of the 7 shows on this Progressive International Motorcycle Show Tour, you can go back and look at and see, and they kind of become tutorials. We've had guys like Chris Richardson from...
That would have been live?
That would have been live and very embarrassing because I'm built like a Ken doll during the winters because it's cold. But we've had guys like Chris Richardson from LA Speed Shop House of Machines on stage when we were in Long Beach narrowing a fuel tank. We've had the lead fabricator from OCC and his own Speakeasy Motors, Evan Favaro from New York at the New York show. He built a whole tank from scratch out of a piece of 18 gauge steel. So you can go back and look at those. We're building a bike from the ground up. At every show we do a little more to it. But what we have this morning is a special treat, is Joe Mielke from South Dakota. He's SoDak Joe. SoDak, yeah. SoDak. But Joe is a metal worker. He's kind of an expert in a lot of different kind of fields. He makes tools, and he's going to talk to you about that. And we also have Justin Kelly with us. He's a veteran that has been participating in the motorcycle missions program with Crystal Hess here in the Texas area. But anyway, Joe, take it away. What are you going to show us today with metalworking?
Well, we connected last night in person, like everybody knows everybody on social media. So just in our conversation last night, I said, I'm going to be doing this on stage, and I really prefer to do it and show somebody so somebody learns something rather than me just talking and doing what I already know how to do. So that's why Justin's here. What we're going to do is take...
And Justin's not a ringer, is he?
He's not a ringer.
Not a ringer. He's not like all of a sudden going to bust out his Billy Lane skills.
Oh, I hope not. What we're going to do is just do some real basic metal shaping techniques using hand tools. If you follow metal shaping on social media, you see more and more that more shops are getting into using power hammers and things that make metalworking a lot more efficient. But to a lot of guys in their garage, that's not attainable. I don't have one, and it's what I try to do for a living. So through my own necessity, I started making my own tools, making wooden mallets and shop bags for metal shaping, which has become a part of my business. Just because I was using my own mallets and showing them on social media, that's the power of the internet. That became a business because people would say, hey, I see what you're using. Where did you get them from? It's like all I can find are what typically most metal shapers have is an arsenal of small plastic mallets that they serve their purpose. What I make is just different. So that's been really good for me as far as growing a business, and has brought me into more experiences with metal shaping than I ever thought I would have, as far as the people I get to meet and places I go and companies I've gotten involved with, and actually getting to teach metal shaping, which is really rewarding, especially when you meet a guy that's curious and interested and doesn't know where to go to find that sort of thing. So that's why I'm here. at the very basics of it, what we're going to be doing is just making dents and smoothing them back out. That's as simple as it is. Metal shaping, you can do one of three things with metal. Well, four. You can cut it, you can weld it, you can stretch it, and you shrink it. It's pretty basic. So the first thing that we're going to do is look at the shop bag, and the shop bag that I brought with me is a little bit different than a traditional shop bag in respect that this is a leather bag filled with sand. Sometimes they'll fill the bags with lead shot or steel shot. That's really kind of a personal preference. That material in the bag, what it's doing is displacing the hammer blow, whether it's a body hammer or a metal shaping mallet. I use sand. Sand is cheap. I don't have to put $150 worth of steel shot into a leather bag. The shop bag I brought is a little bit different in regards to how it's shaped. This is something I just kind of stumbled onto working in my own shop. I've kind of put a recess in the center of the bag that makes it kind of have a donut shape. If you use a shop bag, you kind of get to the points that you're always putting a divot or manipulating the media inside the bag so that your hammer blows are placed where you want them to and displaced the way you want them to. But as soon as you start hitting the bag, the media moves. So that's why I've put this different shape to it, which it was kind of by accident, but the more and more I've used it, I think it's more efficient. Not that this type of bag doesn't have a purpose. It's just, again, like my mallets are just a different tool. That bag that way is just a different tool. Stretching.
You get up there and watch, Justin.
What we're going to do with this disc, I think this is 18 gauge steel. That's what I was told it was anyway. We're going to take this flat disc and basically just make a bowl shape out of it. In order for us to do that, in the center of this plate, we're going to be doing the stretching, and on the perimeter, we're going to be doing the shrinking to help bring those sides up. And stretching is easy. You know, we've got our shop bag and our mallet. That dent is a stretch. We've actually manipulated the material and stretched it out when we create the dent. And if we start concentrating all the stretches in the center, we'll see how it starts to distort the edge. That's because the stress of us stretching the center is causing that distortion, and the only way for us to get rid of that distortion is to shrink that material and to make it start to curve. When I try to explain shrinking, I reference it to like pleats in your pants or pleats in a skirt. That, like a skirt, how it tapers around a woman's waist. The diameter of the fabric around the waist is really the same diameter as the fabric at the base of the skirt. So those pleats shrink the material in around the waist. We kind of do the same thing with metal. They're not called pleats. When we create those ripples or pleats, they're referred to as a tuck. There's different ways to create a tuck. There's things called a tucking tool. You can do it with a wooden stump, with a shop bag. Power hammers that have what are called shrinking dies, they create a tuck and they flatten those tucks back out.
So you're getting ready to tuck this material up.
We're going to tuck it. I don't know where we're going to tuck it, but we're going to tuck it. We're going to tuck it up.
That's good, right, Mark? That's good? Tucking material up. Oh, funny guy, Justin.
And all those tools basically do the same thing. They create what's called a tuck. And then as you flatten that tuck out again, it actually manipulates the material and shrinks it in. So that's how we get that shape. Now to create a tuck, whether you're using the way I'm using this bag with the divot in the middle, it simulates what a shrinking stump would be. When a shrinking stump is a wooden stump that has a dish carved out of it that allows you to create a tuck. And by doing that, what we're doing is we're taking the edge of this metal and going to the perimeter of this dish, take our mallet and just start working the edge of this material. And each time it creates one of these ripples, that is what's referred to as a tuck. Now, if we don't have an anvil or anything like that.
Yeah,
No.
yes, we do.
But we can. No.
We don't have that little one?
What?
No.
When you're shrinking material, once we've created these tucks, what you have to do is what's called trap the tuck. Is if we just
I was a little.
if we just come to it and flatten it back out, we've shrunk the material a little bit, but not very efficiently because we've just hammered it flat back out again. But if we create these tucks again, if we do what's called trapping the tuck, we concentrate our efforts on pinching that tuck a little bit tighter, and then when we hammer it flat, we shrink more efficiently. And a power hammer with shrinking dies is the most efficient way to do that, but we're able to do it with mallets and hammers the same way. It just takes a little bit more effort. So anything you can do with a power hammer, you can physically do with hand tools. It's just one's obviously more efficient than the other, but the more efficient one is usually a lot more expensive. So
And it's not as cool.
it's not as cool, yeah.
What do you need?
I'm thinking we might actually use.
You speak it. Mark will make it so. Your will, his hands.
We can lock into the vise.
Let's put that one in the vise there. It's got one dolly here that's got a good flat surface on it that we'll use for the purpose of folding these tucks in on themselves. So we've created these tucks, and if we were working with body hammers, we'd come in at a sharp angle and basically pinch those tighter. So then when we flatten them out, the shrinking would be more efficient. But we'll still be, every time we flatten out one of those tucks, we have started the shrinking process.
Which seems counterintuitive. It seems like it wouldn't be doing that, but you really are able to shrink the material. It really.
Yeah, this working with steel, it's not as noticeable as it is if we were working with aluminum. A lot of times when I'll be teaching or doing demonstrations, I'll choose to work with aluminum just because there's a lot more instant gratification to it, and it moves a lot faster, takes a little bit less effort. But you can see, even though it's ugly, it's just a bunch of knots in the metal, you can see that every time we hit the perimeter of the steel with the mallet, we did stretch it the same way we were stretching in the metal, and that's what causes our tuck. Now, if you look, every time there was a tuck in that we hammered it in on itself, the ripple kind of gets smaller, and you can actually see the fact that you've manipulated the metal and brought it in on itself. It's very minute, but we have done it. And what I'll have you do, Justin, is in the center of this piece, I'll have you just starting in the middle, stretching it out some more, and then once you've stretched it, we'll just go around that and continue stretching the center so we kind of get a dish shape going here. This perimeter is going to get real ugly and wavy, but that's just the way it is. So
All right.
just start wailing on it, and that's what we need to have happen. Once you get it starting to do that, you can come in here and just flatten those edges out to make it easier on yourself, and can then continue to stretch some more, and just bring one more pass all the way around
little
here.
fella still do that?
Can you? Oh, yeah, I have a little more leverage. But, and and bring your hammer blows right into that divot. That'll help displace it a little bit more.
It's already starting to look like a very nice candy bowl.
Artsy.
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 Yeah, I don't mash it.
Yeah, leverage becomes an important tool there.
And this is something that's kind of key to one thing I tell people about whether it's the stump or the stand that they work on. This height is about right for me.
Yeah.
I'd say about 6 inches shorter for him.
Yep.
When I'll post something on social media that has to do with a shrinking stump, my stump sits about this tall, and someone will say, "Hey, what kind of wood do I need to get to make a stump?" And I'll just say, "Well, any kind of solid hardwood would be great. You know, something that's like an oak is going to last longer, but the wood really doesn't matter." Well, they'll say, "All right, cool. The neighbor cut down a tree. I'll go get a stump." Well, and then they'll shoot me a picture, and they got a stump that's about this tall. It's like, well, you put that on the floor, you're going to be on your knees all day, or you're going to have to put it on a workbench. So I say all that as far as your work surface, you know, obviously
Make
you want
height.
it to be convenient for you.
Yeah.
Well, I was told once that if you're setting up an anvil, and I kind of use that as a frame of reference, make a fist, just hold it at your side. That's where the top of your anvil should be.
Right.
Well, now we got a fairly good amount of shape going here. What
Just like that, Justin.
It's not even fair, man. It's not even fair.
Leverage.
I mean, we don't call him Big Joe for nothing, all right?
no joke, right?
What we're actually going to do is we're going to go a little bit to the English wheel here and just try to smooth some of these.
I think Joe could probably he could forego the hammer, just kind of punch at the metal.
And we're not using a lot of pressure right now. All I'm trying to do is work some of the irregularity out of the center here, and kind of. No, we're not. This die works fine for what we're doing.
And when you're doing the English wheel, at this stage, is it important to continue to do a consistent pattern?
Well, with what I'm doing, I don't have a lot of pressure
Right.
on these dies, so basically the wheels are just kind of glancing over the high spots to kind of blend it all in. Like even the knots that were in the center are already kind of flattened out. If I was trying to put a specific shape or curve into it, then you know the amount of pressure, the contour of the die, the direction in which you're rolling it, that all has to do that.
But right
all
now,
comes into
we're
play.
just roughing it in.
I'm just kind of, I'm just pushing the stresses that we've created in the material out and smoothing the center so that when we take a look at it here.
Good morning, Dallas.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Head on over to Circuit of the Americas booth behind Indian Motorcycle to grab an autograph from 1993 World Champion Kevin Schwantz. He will be there from 11 to 12.
Schwanzy.
Again, that's at the Circuit of the Americas booth behind Indian World Champion Kevin Schwantz.
She said Schwanz.
Schwanz.
Don't touch my Schwanz. He's giving autographs.
So even though this is really ugly, obviously it's starting to shape like a bowl. The center is fairly smooth from just a little bit of time in the English wheel, but the perimeter where all that stress has created these tucks like this. What I'm going to do is try to create some more. I'm going to concentrate all the hammer blows just on the edge here. And just that little bit, 2 more of these tucks popped up, which is what we want it to do.
If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, come forward. If you need a closer look, we can get you up to take a look at what he's doing. If you're on Facebook Live, feel free also to shoot us questions and comments. Preferably not about weight, but
Now, are you starting to hammer out some of those ridges already?
Well, the ones that were really big and prominent, I'm forcing them back out to kind of get it a little bit more uniform shape, even though it's wavy and we've got all these tucks
trying
going.
To tighten those ripples?
Yeah. It has that effect. Like this one was really, you can see how it was really a sharp edge.
Yeah.
That's going to be good when it comes to the shrinking, because when I was talking about trapping the tuck,
Yeah.
we've basically trapped that if we went over to the anvil and hammered it flat, it wouldn't just flatten out. That right there is where the material would shrink in on itself.
That's where you start to get that thickness back.
Yep. So we had like 3 really prominent tucks, and now we've got, I don't know, a dozen or so going there. So what we'll do is we'll go back to the anvil here and just work on flattening those out.
again, if you've just joined us or walking by or joining us on Facebook Live, we've got Joe here with us today, who is teaching Justin, giving him a metal shaping kind of tutorial and introduction to it. We're taking a flat disc and trying to show him how you stretch and shrink the material in order to make a shape out of it. So, and we're using hand tools. If you want to get into this,
on that surface,
this is an inexpensive way to kind of broach the hobby. You can get online or go to Harbor Freight even and buy plastic mallets. Joe at Snap Fabrications has beautiful mallets. This is actually a set. He laser engraved my shop logo, Sin Central Garage, right on there. So, but you can go and get those, and Joe can speak to you. He'll continue to speak about later where you can get these kinds of things. So we've got Joe Mielke, and he's sharing with Justin how to shrink and stretch metal today. Jackie, are you out there?
This tuck is pretty well trapped.
I called her out. I was going to let her give a shout out for what's going on.
I know.
Oh, there you are.
Too. If you're just joining us right now here at the Progressive Main Stage, I know I was hiding. It's going to turn into a hide and seek game now. If you're just now joining us up there on that main stage, and another incredible demonstration and presentation from our friends at Grease and Gears Garage with this demo of metal shaping and awesome SoDak. Joe is in the house. But come on over and take advantage of the Progressive Parlor up and running. We are signing you up right now for your chance to win a grand prize giveaway bike, that beautiful BMW. And when you get signed up to win that bike with any of my lovely girls with the iPads in their hands, I'm going to throw in a free hat or t-shirt. That way you're not going home empty-handed. So come on over and get signed up. It's absolutely free. And we've got some great agents on hand as well. If you'd like that super fast, super free quote from us at Progressive and learn how you can save even more money by bundling your insurance needs together, we have got you covered. Motorcycle, ATV, RV, all of your stuff can be bundled together to save money. And we've got some great agents who would love to give you that free quote and hook you up with a free bandana just for doing so. But come on in, friends, and grab a seat. You're just in the middle of our first awesome presentation from our friends at Grease and Gears Garage.
Thank you, Jackie. Joe is improvising an anvil here with our vise and a body dolly. When I was first introduced to metal shaping as a teenager, I had an old man who my dad took me because he wanted me to just be out of the house and gone. He used to say he got tired of looking at me. So he'd take me to this old guy's shop, and we'd take a framing hammer and a piece of metal, and he would wander around within 100 yards of his shop and find the right shape and beat on it. And so you can do metal shaping really wherever you are with whatever you have, just to kind of get a feel about how to move metal. So, but Joe, what are we working on now?
Well, I'm planishing the tucks that we created out to shrink the material, and we'll show how it's changed a little bit here. Before we had a lot of ripples concentrated around the perimeter of this, and we basically hammered them in on themselves, and that starts the shrinking process. So now we've almost got like a hubcap shape going here.
Or if you turn it the other way, a salad bowl, really, kind of now. It was a candy dish, now it's a salad bowl. And
if we look in the light, we can see we've got quite a bit of stretching going on here from when we were creating the tucks, and a lot of stretching concentrated right in the center to the point that we've got a little bit of a valley going through here. We can take this to the English wheel, or we can use the planishing hammer, and again, we're just going to skip over the high spots, which will draw all those surfaces together, and we may have to come through here and do some stretching to bring it up with the rest of the material, but we'll try just running it through the wheel here and see if we can't just get it all to get a little bit more uniform. What I'm going to do to try to do this is I'm basically just going to go back and forth and work my way around the material from the center to the edge to try to bring that low spot or valley up with the rest of the material.
As you're going, you're tightening that English wheel. What's that doing for you?
Yeah, I'm manipulating it depending on where on the material I'm working. If it's a real light pressure between the two, it's going to be just bouncing over high spots. If I was to put pressure to it, it would do more shaping and actually stretch the material.
So when it's lighter, is more for you to take out your hammering marks?
Yeah, I'm just trying to bring all of the high spots in at the same level and just kind of smooth stuff out. Where if we get this smoothed out and we want to do some more stretching in the center, we could come back to the English wheel now that we've got the metal kind of started in the direction we want, put some pressure on it, put a little bit tighter radius die, and we could stretch the material similar to the way the mallet does. You know, it's one of those things that there's more than one way to skin a cat type thing. You can stretch with mallets, you can stretch with an English wheel. To a degree, you can stretch with a planishing hammer, but to me, that's not its real purpose. It's what sometimes people use it for, but planishing is a finishing tool.
You'd really use like a pull max. Is that some people use their planishing hammer kind of like a tiny pull max? Is that what they're trying to do?
You can do with, basically this is a reciprocating hammer. This is a pneumatic reciprocating hammer. A pull max is, some machines are reciprocating machines. They're just mechanical, not pneumatic. So that one of those machines, you can create dies to do just about anything, whether it's shrinking or stretching or creating belt lines and fenders or putting beads in material. Then it just comes to what do you create a die specifically to do? So,
okay.
Yeah.
We got something on Facebook, Mark?
Hi, Joe. Love you, Mom.
Oh, hi, Joe. Love you, Mom. That's on Facebook.
Hi, Mom.
Yeah. So there's one. There's one, Joe.
You can always count on Mom.
Oh yeah. Doug Burns is watching you, Facebook says. It sounds creepy, but it's not as creepy as it sounds.
This valley that we got here is just a little bit too much for the wheel to just bring out. So.
Hey, Doug.
Not using a whole lot of pressure because I don't want to stretch it farther.
You're just trying to push it out to that same radius.
You'll see that valley that we had going is pretty much gone. So the wheel should.
Yes, sir.
Paid to watch other people work.
Yes, Mike, I still get paid to watch other people work. That's my job, Mike Harden. Thank you for pointing that out. James Frederick, yep, what's up? Yep, I'm back in Texas.
So we're far from finished, but obviously that looks a lot better than where we were 10, 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're far from finished. So what I'll have you do is basically the same thing I just did. We're going to concentrate our hammer blows around the perimeter. We'll just make one pass all the way around, see how many tucks that we've created, go back to the dolly, planish them back out, come to the wheel, and just see, how much more shape we've created by adding shrink to the perimeter there.
Got it.
If you want to show everybody real quick, just the few hammer blows that you've done there have already started to create those tucks that we're looking for. So having the shot bag with that divot being, like I said, similar to a shrinking stump is really allowing you to concentrate the hammer blows and get the tuck.
Well, like I'm self-learning in my shop, and I have a similar bag. It's round, but I don't have that donut effect. And I wind up doing the same thing. I'm constantly taking my fist and trying to grind a pocket in it.
Yep.
So that the bag kind of helps me make my shape.
So now, if you're going to do that, Joe, you need to fill the bag with sand and then sew it.
No, actually, when I realized I was coming here, I had this bag with me, and I took it to a saddle guy in Stillwater and had him stitch this circle in there for me, and then I put the sand in afterwards. I think it's pulling one of the stitches right now, but it's still serving the purpose. Like he said, we're not having to constantly manipulate the media inside the bag. This bag still going to serve its purpose. This is specifically so that we can create these tucks more efficiently.
Right.
Metal shaping is always like this. Just when it starts to look good, you go and mess it up all over again.
We're back to a candy dish again all of a sudden.
And you'll find that anytime you're doing any kind of metal shaping, I mean, you could be to the point that you think you're almost finished and just about done, and there's a low spot right where your planishing hammer or the English wheel might not be taking it out. You have to go back to putting some stretch in it, put some dents in it, and smooth it back out. So it's always a back and forth process.
It's gonna look ugly before it looks pretty several times.
Now, like, say I was making a bowl or making a hubcap for a Cadillac or something. Like at this point, obviously, I need to go back to shrink this, and that'll start to pull that radius up. But like now that this is curled up so hard, it makes this middle look flat. Would I go back and try to stretch some more in here?
Yeah.
Or would I shrink this first?
Certainly, depending on the profile you're trying to make. That, yeah, if you don't have enough body or shape to the center of it, yeah, whether it's going back and putting more shape to it with your mallet or trying to work it out with an English wheel, it's one of those by any means necessary type things. You know, the way I look at metal shaping and the way somebody else might look at metal shaping could be two totally different methods, and that's fine. I mean, I've been told sometimes the way I do it is wrong. It's like, well, okay, that's your opinion. I tell people, it's like, if you get the end result you're looking for and it works, who's to tell you you've done it wrong, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm in a metal shaping class and I've got students that are learning, and I tell them, it's like, you'll watch me do something a certain way because that's the way it works for me, either because it's how I learned, how it's most efficient, or because the tools that I have at my use, that's how it works most efficient to me. If we had a power hammer here with all of the fancy dies, we wouldn't be messing with a mallet in the shop bag. We would be at the machine, letting the machine do the work. But that's not the case. So
It's a lot cooler, though.
Yeah.
It's cooler.
The thing I will say is understanding how the metal reacts to working with a mallet and a shop bag or a mallet and a stump, if you understand that theory, switching over to using a power hammer with a set of shrinking dies, so to speak, that you already know the method, you already know the theory, so getting used to using that machine is that much easier.
Joe pointed out when we were trying to navigate around Dallas last night, it was a good analogy, that, you know, it's easier to get around Dallas actually when there's a lot of traffic, because the exits that do this aren't coming at you so fast. And that's kind of, you know, when you're doing it by hand, you can see slowly how the metal's taking shape. So when you go to a machine and it's doing it quicker, you know where it's going to go. You have a sense of where it's going to go, and you're not having to, it's not coming at you so fast that you're not really understanding what the metal's doing.
Yeah,
So.
kind of in like welding, if you learned how to weld either by torch welding or stick welding, getting to grasp the concept and the technique of TIG welding is easier.
Right.
If you learn to weld with just a MIG wire feed welder, you don't have that muscle memory or the experience of knowing how your rod gets shorter and how you have to follow the puddle and all that sort of thing. So learning with the very basics, to me, you know, just helps when you have the opportunity to either invest in more modern equipment or work for somebody that has that equipment. You're more capable and can relate to what the machine is wanting to do for you. So now that you've created all these tucks, we're back to using the dolly to try to flatten those out and keep working on the shrinking process. And every time we get one of those tight ridges that are still there, that's a good thing. That's
So am I looking to hammer that super flat, or will the wheel do that?
We'll either do that with the wheel or with the planishing hammer. You know, hopefully we'll get to the point that the planishing hammer will be the right thing for us to do, and that'll really help us smooth things out. But every time one of those little ridges is created, that's a good thing. So.
Now, Joe, just so you know, you've got Kino Sasaki is watching, and Aaron Green is watching you. So
these guys know what they're doing too. There's
Aaron and you have a lot in common. Aaron knows how to farm too now.
You know, I don't know that we have a lot in common. I have a lot of respect for the guy. You know, when the big wheel or the big tire chopper craze was kind of the in thing, he was one of the guys that was really doing more metal work.
Yeah.
There was a lot of Billy Bolton guys that were just throwing parts at frames and fat tires and giving a nice paint job, but he was one of the guys that within the industry was doing a lot of metal shaping.
Yeah.
So.
Really cool stuff. Really was. Still is. He's still out there building. It's a different world now trying to build custom motorcycles than it was 15 years ago.
I can't remember if the bike that he built had a name to it, but it was like a
Isn't it white light?
blown alcohol.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Aaron, if you're watching there, give us the name of that bike.
So you can see where it starts to trap those.
Yep, every one of those little ridges is where the material has been shrunk in on itself, and that's exactly what we're going for. So we're far from a bowl, but we can see that it is taking shape and doesn't have all of those ripples or the tucks on the edge, so that we know that we're shrinking the edge. Depending on what shape we're going for, you know, we could do another round of shrinks, and if you want to, you can go back to the bag and do another round and create some more tucks and shrink it, and then we'll look at bringing some of this into being more uniform and hopefully get to the planishing hammer and really start to smooth it out. And on your mallet, you're using the flatter of the face. If you use that end, will do a little more work.
Heather, how are we looking on time? How are we looking on time? 15 minutes? Okay. I love the way Mark tells me 15 minutes is this. That's, to everybody else in the room, how many is 6? The mark that's 15. I get it now, 1.5.
6 or 51.
Yeah, we're 51. Look at him, man. He's just comfortable now.
He's a young guy. He's just wailing into it.
Yeah.
No mercy.
Yeah, so's Aaron Green. It doesn't intimidate Big Joe.
No. Should not.
Of course, Big Joe and Aaron Green both were metal shaping on a stage. The amount of power in those blows, those are big guys.
Yeah, we have both hands on stage. You were there just before he was.
This last 2017?
Yeah, were you there the year before that?
I was there 2 years ago.
2 years ago. 2016, yeah.
It's all about
And this is really indicative of the metal shaping process. If you see metal shaping on television, you don't see how it's always back and forth. You see somebody, probably the most common thing that people have seen is back in the day with Jesse James and the Motorcycle Mania. He's annealing the aluminum. You got fire, so that's what you saw on television. When you're working with aluminum, sometimes you anneal, sometimes you don't anneal. It all depends on what the shape is you're working on. But it's not like you go ahead and anneal your material, beat it with the hammer a few times, go to the English wheel, and voila.
Yeah.
It's done. It's back and forth. And I don't know if it was you or Xavier I was talking to, that sometimes you'll have hours into this part, and it's going the right way, the way you want it to go, and then all of a sudden, it goes the wrong way. And you just cut bait and start over. Every metal shaper has got a pile of screw ups.
Yeah.
That's humility. That's just a reminder that you can always do better.
Also, if you ever get anything that's custom made that somebody has shaped for you out of metal, I think it's good to watch the process like this. I mean, I know that it can be, it's very repetitive, it's bang, 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 stretch, but it gives you a sense of when somebody gives you a price to make something, this is true American craftsmanship. This is being made by hand, and whether they're using even, more efficient equipment, it's still very labor intensive to do this. I mean, in a fuel tank, it's not unusual for people to have, even just a simple fuel tank, to have 25, 30 hours just in getting the shapes ready before they start welding it and putting it all together.
You got a question?
Yeah, so, as I shrink, I'm starting to get that same, like last time that the lower spot was that larger ring, and it's like that ring's coming in. Now, is that going to happen as I shrink the outside and start tightening everything up? Like, is that radius?
Yeah,
going to kind of pull
the
in?
fact that we created another valley basically is you can see where you concentrated your hammer blows to create all those tucks, right?
Okay.
And so that just we stretched some more here.
Okay.
So we have to stretch in the middle to bring it back up to it. So every time you're creating a tuck, you're stretching the material first.
So will I do like you did last time and kind of come through with lighter blows and stretch that ring?
Yeah,
right?
where we've got this. On this side, we've got a high spot, so you just go ahead and finesse that back out so that it's easier for us to smooth the whole
now,
thing.
like on your mallet, am I going to use the more radius side or the more flatter side for that, like with those light blows?
I'd probably still use the rounder side, the way I intend the mallet. If you were to just have this mallet, that would be your stretching and shrinking, and that would be your planishing.
Okay.
But that's not to say that you can't use either end. But,
Got it.
one thing I will say, at this point, where you can see the theory of how we're able to stretch the material and get it to create this shape. If we were in my shop and you say you have a stump, if we were working with a stump, that's obviously the dish is more rigid. At this point, I would probably get a mallet with more of a pointed edge and get on the wood stump and really concentrate my blows closer to the edge. And if I did that, I would get more tucks. They'd be smaller, but I'd get more, and that would really help me to draw this edge up more rather than creating this shallow dish. We'd be able to really start working that edge to the point that it almost would start to roll over. And so sometimes you get to the limits of a tool like this to what you can do. You got to shift to something else. You know, I have. So
because the bag's softer, that's why those ribs that are coming up are so big.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to if we were working with a stump or some kind of other shrinking dish. That's rigid and hard. We'd be able to get tighter tucks, or to actually use what's called a tucking fork, which is just basically two tapered rods next to each other, where you actually put the material in that and you twist, and you cause a ripple, and you come along the other side of it and you twist it the other way. So we've created a tuck and we've trapped it that it won't go anywhere, and that's where you can really start working an edge and getting a tighter radius.
Do you use that a lot, or do you hammer most of it?
I don't use a tucking fork. Some guys, that's what they swear
You have to
by.
be very careful when you say that.
When you tuck a fork.
Well, when you say tucking fork, you just want to make sure that you're very clear about what
Enunciate.
We're saying. Enunciate, yes. Don't let that.
And that's what some guys prefer to use is a fork, where myself, I'll just, myself, I prefer to just use mallets or hammers with the stump. I actually just recently took a 7-inch diameter piece of Delrin plastic that I just had sitting around, and I machined a dish in that. So, and it's a small, pretty tight dish that I'd take that edge and actually take a body hammer and concentrate all the blows close to the edge, and all the tucks are really short, but I get a lot of them, and so it'll really shrink that edge, and that's how you can get it to really roll rather than just be a gradual shape like this. So again, that's just to point out that there's so many different tools that do so many different jobs, that is there a right way or a wrong way, as long as you get the results you're looking for. So, but for where we're at here, certainly I'd go ahead and try to get that valley out of there. Then we'll have you use the wheel to try to smooth it all out.
We got Clinton Wallace joining us. Joe Sparrow is there. Good friends all around the country. It really makes when you begin to wander through museums and you see suits of armor and those kinds of things, you know, that really begins to impress on you how talented there have been people throughout human history doing metal shaping.
I follow probably a half dozen guys that's what they're doing. They create armor. They're either creating pieces for costumes, or they're creating armor for like museum exhibits, things of that nature.
For medieval times.
For medieval times. Yeah. And yeah, it's metal shaping, but it's like a whole different train of thought, because they're, at least the ones that I watch, they're using more traditional forging and blacksmithing type procedures, where they're using a lot of heat. So you got everything pretty much drawn out to about the same shape. You know, it's like what they say, it looks like a bag of walnuts at the moment. But we'll have you come over to the wheel here. And you said you've got a wheel in your shop, right?
Yes, sir.
So I won't tell you how to use it.
I know not to jam my fingers in it.
Yeah.
I see, this is where I struggle on my wheel, is as I roll, like, I'll go one way to chase something, and maybe like one of the knots or something will push me around, and I'll feel it twist on me, and I can't ever walk it back. So I'll wind up loosening it up just so I don't make the wrong roll in it. I'll loosen it up and reset myself.
One thing that comes down to is really every machine is a little bit different in the way that they work. I mean, if this was rigid mounted to the floor and we watched you working, we would see this arm flexing. Even though it's heavy gauge steel and it's gusseted, I guarantee you this flexes as you're rolling the material through there. Yeah. Whether it's sheet steel or sheet aluminum, this will flex. And each machine flexes a little bit different. It's got a little bit of different slop in the way that the dies are. Like this, you can see that. I'm not entirely sure if there's a shim missing or something. See how it
how
tracks?
It's walking back and forth.
I'm going to get, yeah, okay, there it is. That causes an issue.
We won't worry about that.
So how the...
I got too tight.
Oh, we got tight. So how the upper and lower dies track with one another, if there's any slop in the bottom,
Got it.
Every machine's a little bit different. So the only thing that you can do to help yourself with that is, like anything, practice.
Got it.
And it doesn't have to be on something that you've put shape into. It's like it can just be a flat square of material, and just trace zigzag, or just actually lay out zigzag lines across the length of the panel, and then you just have to get used to tracking those lines and how you manipulate your piece back and forth as you're tracking it through, and just to help you develop the rhythm. And then when you get to those points that there's something that's fighting you, your brain won't have to think, okay, I got to turn it this way to do that, to get there without...
Yeah, see, that's where I'm at right now on my wheel, is like I'll run through and maybe one of the little hammer knots will put me somewhere, and when it kicks me off, I'm like, when I go to pull back, it wants to corkscrew, or so I just back out.
It's like guys that pinstripe, if they teach you how to pinstripe, what do they start you doing? Just pulling lines. You're not making any shape, you're not writing anything, you're not making a pattern, you're just pulling lines, just getting used to how the tail of the brush flows and how the friction of the paint, makes the brush follow the way it does. And so it's kind of the same theory. You just have to practice on patterns and develop a rhythm. And so when those things happen, it's just muscle memory takes over, and you just...
And you guys are manses, because I wear gloves because I always cut my hands on the edge of the metal.
Yeah, we're not adhering to any safety standards here.
I mean,
Hello, Dallas IMS fans.
We're in trouble now.
Do you want to see
Yeah.
some action? Head on over to the stunt
You want to see some guy lose his finger? Come on over to the progressive stage.
Army FMX stunt show. 11:30. Head on over.
I think our time is coming to a close.
Well, we're going to take like a minute and just touch on the planishing hammer, because he doesn't have one.
Absolutely.
So with a little work in the English wheel, a lot of the irregularity has come out of here. There's a couple places we'd probably have to come in and do some more stretching to smooth it out. So if we were working on a hubcap, or if this was a teardrop shape that we're working on the top of a fuel tank, we're getting pretty close to having a uniform shape. Now, what I'll say about a planishing hammer, just so at least you get a little bit of experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you get one in your shop, that you maybe don't make the mistakes I made. When I first got into a shop that had a planishing hammer, it was an air chisel with a mechanism, with a foot pedal, absolutely. And it was on or it was off.
Yeah.
There
so
was
I was
no
looking
adjustment.
to build one like that, but I got told not to.
That you can do it that way, but you need to put some adjustability into it, because that's where the efficiency of using a planishing hammer has to do with all with how you can adjust it with what you're working. The same way that we're adjusting the pressure on the English wheel, you need to be able to adjust not only the pressure, but of the dies and the space between the dies, but regulate the air pressure so you can regulate the speed. If we turn this thing, this isn't my machine.
Because if you think about it, hitting with a hammer, you want to be able to control how many times you're hitting it with the hammer.
That's wide open.
Wow.
That's all the air pressure. When I first used a planishing hammer, that's the way it was. You stepped on the pedal and that's all you had. You couldn't adjust anything. So when I tried to use it and teach myself how to use it, I made a mess. I didn't like it. I pushed in the corner and literally never touched it for the 12 years that I was in that shop, because it's like, I don't like it. When I finally got my own planishing hammer, it had adjustability built into it. Mine, you can raise and lower the bottom die. It looks like with this one, you would loosen these fasteners and move the air hammer up and down to create the gap that you wanted. This valve, we can adjust the air pressure to a degree, but it's not. Yeah, a better valve would do this air hammer a lot of good, so that we could dial it into where we wanted it. But you do have the adjustability, which is what we want. When using a planishing hammer, the things that I've learned is slow down, meaning reduce the air pressure so the hammer slows down, reduce the pressure, and by that we're going to put a little bit more gap in between the dies so that we're not pinching the material. Most machines will have different radius lower dies, the same way an English wheel was. You might take a die and see, okay, which one matches the shape of the material I'm working. I say go a little bit flatter than what you think fits that radius. I say that because we're also opening up the gap, and that allows us to freely move our piece in the planishing hammer and skip over high spots, which helps us to smooth things out. Not to say that we're not ever going to use tighter radius dies, that we're not going to use more pressure, but for the basics of using a planishing hammer to make your part look pretty, slower speed, less pressure, flatter die, and always use lubricant.
Always
use
lube,
lubricant.
yes.
And if you get a planishing hammer, just experiment with it. Use it with the material dry. You'll learn, especially if you work with aluminum. The aluminum will get almost gummed up, and it'll be hard sometimes to move between the dies. WD-40 or any kind of lubricant, you just have to use it, because even with an English wheel, sometimes it'll help things
You got more time?
work better, and you'll just find that it's
Yeah.
relieves stress. It just makes everything easier.
No pun intended.
So we don't have a lot of pressure on there. Obviously, I can move pretty freely in the dies. If you put it in between the dies and you catch it on high spots, you need to relieve the pressure a little bit. We might bring it back down as we smooth it, but if you're catching it on stuff and you can't move it, you need to relieve the pressure. We want to keep it moving pretty slow. We're going to put a little bit of pressure on the part so that the part is on the bottom die. We don't want it bouncing in between. So we're just going to work on these edges right here. This is another thing that some guys will tell you different opinions on how to use a planishing hammer, whether I'd want to follow the edge like this, or myself, what I'm doing is I'm working from the center out, back and forth. The reason I'm doing that is that's the direction we've been working the metal so far. Every time we're creating a tuck, it's radiating from the center out. When we're going to the English wheel, we're working from the center out, or we're working lengthwise across the whole part. So to me, it makes sense that I want to just continue working the material in the same direction that I have been. Again, that isn't always the case, but for what we're doing to just smooth stuff out, I just like to continue working the material in the same direction. I'm getting caught up a little bit on a high spot there, but it's not too bad that I really need to adjust anything. We can see if I've done enough work there yet. Not quite. we got a little bit of a low spot still running through the panel here, but you can see where it's glancing off these high spots here.
Yeah, where it's like scraping.
And on the bottom side, that's what I want it to do right now, because I'm not trying to use this to shape anything, just trying to use it to smooth it out. I might tend to go back to the English wheel and try to take some of this out just because it's more efficient at doing it. But for us, really what we're just trying to do is get a feel of how to use the machine and what kind of, we're really right there where it's highest. That's fairly smooth right there in comparison to something right here where you got all those ripples yet. And it's not it's not something that works fast. If it's working real fast, you're probably not getting the results that you want, really. So anyway, if you want to get a feel of that, you can just pick a narrow area to work, so you're not trying to work the whole thing, and that way you can see kind of what the results are.
Kind of right there at the end.
I think we're getting to be about our time, but
I was getting sucked in.
What's that?
I said I was getting sucked in.
And that's one good thing about this stuff. I mean, if you've got, I'll turn up the stereo real loud in my shop and put on ear protection, and it's funny how the only thing I can hear is the music. I can't even hear the machine working.
Just tune it out.
So you just go with it, and you kind of do get sucked into it, and you get a rhythm, you get a flow, and it just kind of goes. So
you can just see like where we had that crown right there. Like as you're going, like pushing down on that bottom die, that top one comes down and hits it. You can feel it in your hand. You can feel that metal starting to do its thing going around.
Yeah, and that's what I find the planishing hammer to be most effective at, is just finish work. There are times that you can use it to put shape in an edge or whatever, but for the most part, I use the planishing hammer almost exclusively just for the finishing, to make it all smooth. And that's what we're doing, is we're blending any highs and low spots together. Like I said, we're making dents and smoothing them back out for the most part.
Well, Justin, how was that? Was that helpful?
That was awesome, man.
You're going to get to go back now and just, you got you a couple
so I was
steps
telling
ahead.
him when I met him last night at the event, like I nerd out on his videos online, like I watch him on Instagram and the YouTube videos. And so I've got this big stump and I've got a shop bag, and I watched this video on cutting the shrinking bowl. So I went back and cut a shrinking bowl in my stump, and I tried what I just did here today, and I wasn't so efficient on my own. So
well, that's
I definitely
great.
took something away from it.
Well, and I hope that's been the experience for everybody. And of course, we want to thank Mittler Brothers is a good partner of ours, and they some of the tools we buy, some of them they provide for us. But Mittler Brothers, thank you so much. And I want to give a big thanks to Progressive International Motorcycle Shows for letting some greasy kind of mechanics just get on here and play and show other greasy mechanics at Grease and Gears Garage, kind of a little slice of shop life, inspire, educate, inform, and hopefully entertain a little bit with just what it takes to be involved in customizing motorcycles. And of course, J&P Cycles, the world's largest distributor of aftermarket motorcycle parts. We want to thank you guys, because you've been a good, solid partner of ours for a number of years. So thank you so much. Thank you, Joe, for coming back. Now, if you want to get in touch with Joe or follow Joe around, you can go to SoDak Joe, or as most people call it, SoDak.
SoDak Big Joe, yeah, that's my...
SoDak Big Joe. It's SoDak for South Dakota, where he's from. But somehow that got to be SoDak Big Joe. But anyway, and Justin, thank you so much. Check out Motorcycle Missions. Justin's involved with Motorcycle Missions as well. So thanks for being with Grease and Gears Garage for a little bit.
We all appreciate you guys, too.
Well, put your hands together and make some noise for the team from Grease and Gears.